Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Obasi. Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, all our viewers out there. As always, nothing much to say on oil. I mean, it edged up slightly. Geopolitical concerns, Middle East, Russia-Ukraine talks, and the like. So 71.20, I think, is where 71.18 for Brent crude, 67.58 for American grade. And as always, we just remind everybody what the benchmark is to let everyone know that countries need oil prices to be higher. Asian stocks were mixed this morning. We had Japan is closed for a public holiday. When I say closed, the Japanese market, stock market is closed for a public holiday. So China down, Hong Kong down, but Korea, India, and Australia are up. China held rates, the one-year loan prime rates, which impacts corporations and households. The five-year loan prime rates, that's LPR, which usually impacts mortgages. They kept that in place, even their 7-day rates. They haven't really changed anything since October, so they're steady as she goes. To the U.S., also as expected, rates were held. FOMC outcome still within that range of 4.25 to 5. We're coming to the U.S. now, where they held their own rates yesterday. And then Jerome Powell was really particular about talking about the uncertainty that tariffs are bringing to the U.S. And I won't say he subbed him, but he basically just was pretty clear as to the issues. And there was a particularly interesting exchange where I think it was a Wall Street Journal reporter asked him, then why are you still pricing in, or rather forecasting 2 rate cuts this year? And Powell was like, what would you write? So, I don't really know how things are going to turn out. So you can listen to that now.
I think a world where people can make their daily economic decisions in businesses and they're not having to think about the possibility of significantly high inflation. We know inflation will bounce around. That is price stability. I think we were getting closer and closer to that. I wouldn't say we were at that. Inflation was running around 2.5% for some time. I do think with the arrival of the tariff inflation, further progress may be delayed. The SEP doesn't really show further downward progress on inflation this year, and that's really due to the tariffs coming in. So delayed, but if you look at our forecasts, we do see ourselves getting back into the low 2s in 26 and then down to 2 by 27, of course, highly uncertain. So I see progress having been made toward that, and then progress in the future. I think that progress is probably delayed for the time being.
If that's the case, why are there cuts in the SEP for 2025?
So again, people wrote down 2 cuts the last time, and they look at they wrote down meaningful decline in growth from 2.1 to 1.7 in 2025, a tick up in the unemployment rate, so not much there, but core inflation up by 0.3. And so those kind of balance each other out. So people, not everybody, but on balance, people wrote down similar numbers. The changes aren't that big. The other factor, though, as I mentioned, is just really high uncertainty. What would you write down? I mean, it's really hard to know how this is going to work out.
All right, so the outlook has been lowered for the U.S. economy. I think they're seeing GDP growth now at 1.7 from 2.1. The core PCE, Dr. Abati talks about this index a lot, personal consumption expenditure, they're seeing 2.8 from 2.5, unemployment rising to 4.4 from 4.3. Trump, trust him. I mean, I was expecting him to speak out. He went on Truth Social and said the Fed must cut interest rates. The Fed must cut interest rates. So he posted on Truth Social saying that they must do that. But I mean, you cannot, economic conditions don't allow for that. The Fed will be much better off cutting rates as U.S. tariffs start to transition. And you are the one causing the tariffs, transition their way into the economy. Do the right thing. April 2nd is Liberation Day in America. Just amazing. Markets picked up, though, yesterday. You've talked about Erdogan and the detaining of the mayor of Istanbul, but there was Mogul, yeah. Essentially the lira really took a big hit. I mean, the drop not seen in about 2 years. And Mehmet Simek, this finance minister, I remember when doing musical chairs with finance ministers, he has done a lot to try to build investor confidence, and in just one day, everything was almost wiped out. 12% drop to about 42 to the dollar. Stocks fell to a 4-year low. Government bonds came under protest and coming under pressure. You've shown the protest. And then they had to pump, some folks talking to Reuters said that they had to pump in anywhere from $5 to $10 billion into the market yesterday in order to try to stem the slide of the lira. So, it's all up in the air there as to when he will be released and what goes forward from there. We'll round off with fuel again in Nigeria. The Dangote Refinery put out this incredibly technical notice, which would, if you didn't know what was going on, you would be highly confused. So, I mean, big red letters there. People were sending me this thing saying, what is going on? Temporary suspension of sales of petroleum products. If you look at the first paragraph, so I want to inform you that we are halting these sales because of a mismatch between our sales proceeds, which are in Naira, and our crude oil purchase obligations, which are currently denominated in US dollars. Look, I think it would have been clearer to just say we have a Naira for crude agreement, either it's coming up for renewal, it's being delayed, or whatever the case is, and that's the reason why we are suspending this. Because, I mean, a lot of companies in Nigeria have dollar obligations and Naira sales. Telcos, for instance, if you look at their capital expenditure on dollar loans, would an MTN or Airtel say that we're going to stop selling you data or airtime because we have dollar obligations to service? So the implication of this, of course, is that if fuel stations that are not able to lift now from the Dangote Refinery probably go to the NNPC if they can handle that increase in demand, and it actually benefits them, right? Because they are a competitor. So there's almost an incentive for them not to renew or to delay this Naira for crude deal because of the impact. So it's hopeful, and then that would lead to a price increase, because now if you're not able to truck fuel from the refinery, you have to truck it from either Port Harcourt, where there is there's all that chaos going on, they're all worry, and so that's going to increase prices. But look, people pay rent, people have agreements, when an agreement is coming to an end. These things, whatever the Naira crude thing could have been sorted out between both parties, the back and forth is just a lot, and I just hope it doesn't impact fuel sales. So that notice just should have been clearer. Naira for crude, it's not renewed, and this is the impact, rather than that incredibly technical statement that they put out.
No, I don't think it's technical, Rotus. I'll disagree with you. I think it's very clear. And please, I'm saying this because of the principle. This attempt to sabotage Dangote will not work.
Fair point.
It's not going to work, because we all know all of this is an attempt to sabotage Dangote, because some people are importing petrol from other sources. What was the crude agreement for? The crude agreement was a statutory conventional agreement we had way back in the 90s that 450,000 barrels per day would be set aside for local refining as something around energy, national energy security. Over the years, when we did not have refineries, they started using those amounts in swap. But we're supposed to set it aside as a stock for national security. The fact that we are negotiating for renewal is an affront to national energy security, because it's not supposed to be the case. It was supposed to be statutorily set aside. Dangote is the biggest beneficiary because he's got 650,000 barrels. He takes over 380,000 barrels of that 445,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
But we know how the government has been lackluster in meeting that agreement.
Right.
Up to the last time, Dangote was given, I think, 61,000. Dangote had been using his own money to cover the dollar shortfall before now.
Yep.
It's because it's not up for renewal yet, they've not been able to renew it, and he can't continue to use his money to cover the shortfall. That's why the man is crying. Let's call it spade a spade.
Right, but Rufai, the thing is, so if I have dollar purchases and Naira sales, you can essentially convert your Naira sales at the prevailing exchange rates to even out what you're purchasing in USD. What my thing is, I don't want Nigerians to suffer for this. And the two of them, he imports fuel from other places, raw crude from other sources as well. So that, but my thing is, look, I'll get you. Your point is well made. But this tennis match between the two of them, this could have been sorted out.
Talk to the Nigerian government.
True.
Allow this man be. This man spent over 20 billion to fix the refinery.
I agree with you.
Because of their selfish interest.
But this has an impact. It has an impact on prices. You can also import fuel from elsewhere. In the meantime, in be interim
Yes, but I
until
think-
you renew the
But with due respect,
deal.
Rotus,
I-
Rotus,
I
the
do
man has been
think
using
that-
his money to cover the cost and import fuel from other places. Most of his supplies have been from America. But what he's saying is that this cannot continue because of what the government is
I
doing.
do think that,
agreed,
I do think that the
agreed.
government has a responsibility, Rotus.
yeah,
and I
agreed.
think it's a bit unfair to Dangote to place the blame on him, saying that, oh, other people also, a lot of they have commitments in dollars, and so he should be able to just convert to Naira and just make the product available. Right from the beginning of this, of the Dangote Refinery coming on stream, there have been a lot of back and forth with the NNPCL. And this goes back again to this conversation around a deliberate sabotage and who at the end of the day is benefiting. And I think we need to have that critical conversation if we want to move forward. We talked about the fact that despite the fact that we have local producers, we still had imports. We still had, we still had imports from NNPC and some marketers, which Dangote challenged. Against all odds, they still continued in the interest of Nigerians to produce. They talked about the Naira for crude, how they had challenges for that. With that, they talked about availability of crude supply from the NNPC, how they had challenges with that, and now they've come to a crossroad. They've had to make a business decision. Yes. We've often said it here. It's not a charity. He invested money, he's expecting returns in investment. But what we also don't see, it's not just about the business, it's about energy security, like you mentioned, for the Nigerian people. Indeed. What this is, the implication of this is that we might be, of course, we should expect a hike in petroleum prices. Number two is that availability of the product in itself might also come under question. Number three is that it also enables what we are trying to stop in terms of people who are benefiting from this system through imports, and the imports, rather than supporting local production. There are a lot of, for Nigerians, there's a lot of loss from this. It's not just about Dangote. It's not just about
I just want to
Dangote.
make one quick point.
Yeah.
Why is there a state of emergency in Rivers? Because a pipeline was blown up.
Right?
We have had shortfalls that have existed in our crude supplies for vandalism
to our own
and so
refinery.
on. True.
Our
I'm with you. I agree.
With due
Dr.
respect,
Bati, I agree with you.
I'm
with you.
With due respect, do you know that we are spending more to import petrol now that we have local working refineries at any time?
That's because of the devaluation. There's also the devaluation of the currency. So all that is in place. Dr. Bati,
Let me start on a happy note. The Wellbeing Research Center of the University of Oxford has just released the World Happiness Report for the year 2025. And the interesting thing there is that the variables used, the indicators used, generosity, freedom for corruption, GDP per capita, social stability, and all of this. And in this regard, the Nordic countries were the ones leading. Finland is said to be the happiest country in the world because the people are generous to each other and the government is very stable. Then you have Denmark, you have Norway, you have Sweden. Sweden is also there. All the Nordic countries. And then, of course, on that list, you have Netherlands. Then, for the first time, Costa Rica and Mexico are there. A survey of 130 countries. I looked through the list. I didn't see Nigeria.
We used to be the happiest nation
but
in the
we
world.
used to be the happiest country in the world. It looks like we are no longer happy. But very quickly, you talked about gold yesterday. Gold, yes, even did better yesterday after the Fed Reserve, press statement by Powell. 16 times gold has hit a record high. I think it's now trading about $3,000, 0.855. The bullion is even doing much better. And when there is uncertainty, when the dollar is down, people rush, to hedge their bets by buying gold. The key thing about the Federal Reserve report, the excitement that you saw in the stock market was because of the projections about the dot plot, that there will still possibly be 2 rate cuts this year. And that helped in the stock market. The S&P 500 went up about 1.08%. The Dow Jones by 1.4%. And then the NASDAQ, by 0.95 or thereabouts. So, but Trump is a habitual critic of the Federal Reserve. He thinks that they just must cut rates. But what the Federal Reserve has done is to take a wait-and-see position, a very cautious position, because they think that, look, the tariffs may affect the general situation in the country. And finally, as for China, China just more or less following the same thing in the U.S., also trying to be cautious because of tariff tensions, So they've kept their APR, 1 year APR at the same rate. Yep. They've also kept the 5-year, APR, which is for mortgage, also at 3.6%. Yes. So you see these central banks adopting a very cautious
and we get Bank of England later
approach. Japan was also cautious yesterday. So it's a wait and see because of the escalating trade war in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rotus.
Thank you.